My name is Pearl Schumann. I received a Master of Science in Nutrition from National University of Natural Medicine in Portland, Oregon, and I'm here today. I wanted to share with you all a little bit about what we know about COVID-19 and potential therapeutic nutrition interventions. So today I'm going to talk about utilizing food as medicine. We can use nutrition to support our physical, mental, and emotional resilience, all of which are important every day, but more so today. And all of those factor into our overall health and how we can fight infections. So I just want to be clear though, nutritional strategies for COVID are only supportive at this point. We don't have a lot of data yet because it's so new. So what we're looking at today will be based on a collection of research from similar viruses and potential support that those show were effective in previous viruses and similarities to this virus. So we'll go into detail on that. We'll talk about foods, compounds, supplements, and the research that shows how they optimize immune responses and or how they can inhibit the spread of the virus internally. Again, these have not been specifically tested for COVID-19. Studies are being done right now, but we need much more time to study it to know anything for certain. Also, this is general immune and nutrition support information. Personalized nutrition is much more important, obviously, per person, but I mean, depending on medications you're taking or other chronic illnesses you may have, that can change what kind of foods would be recommended for you. For instance, there are nutrient and medication interactions, and so there's certain foods that you may need to avoid if you're on specific medications. So I first wanted to talk about how does COVID work. I am not an immunologist, just to be clear, but I did study a little bit nutrition immunology. I just wanted to highlight this because looking at how the virus works shows us different areas that there's potential for intervention. So first, the virus binds to a host receptor cell, and the receptor it binds to is called the angiotensin converting enzyme 2, so it's shortened to ACE2. And I mention this because it will be important, and I'll mention it a couple of times. Step 2, virus of the genome enters the cell cytoplasm and then it fuses with the cell membrane. Virus releases its genetic material into the nucleus or cytoplasm. The viral RNA is then transcribed, and that then the mRNA directs protein synthesis, which is unique to coronaviruses. And then the virus replicates and releases virions from the cell to further infect neighboring cells in the similar way. What's unique about COVID is it uses different amino acids in binding to the ACE2 receptor. And this could possibly explain why the virus is sticking about 10 times more than SARS. So SARS is also a coronavirus. There are about 7 coronaviruses known to date. COVID-19 is just one of them. SARS is the one that looks and acts most, similarly to COVID. So they're characterized by these spike proteins, which you see in the picture, and that's what classifies as corona. So again, the ACE2 receptor is really important because that's how the virus enters our cells. So if you look at where these ACE2 receptors are, that's how you can you can see why we're having the symptoms we're having, right? So it's in the mucosal lining found in respiratory tract, your lung, digestive. So symptoms are related to the areas that those receptors are. Again, this is not intended to be used as medical treatment. I just want to restate that disclaimer. This is nutrition as support for immune function and potential interventions. I'll show you certain foods you can incorporate to get these nutrients or biological compounds that could be beneficial for you. We will talk more about the ACE2 receptor and how it relates to what are called comorbidities. So I think you've probably heard this by now that certain people are more susceptible to the virus. So people with cardiovascular disease, hypertension, and diabetes tend to have more severe symptoms and worse outcomes. So I wanted to talk a little bit about why this might be. People with these conditions are commonly prescribed in what are called angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors, or ACEIs. And these actually may increase ACE2 receptors. So remember I said ACE2 receptors were really important because they've found that's how the virus is entering our cell. So if you have an increase in these receptors on your cell surface, you are going to have a higher expression of that enzyme and therefore greater susceptibility because there's more opportunity for the virus to enter the cell. So some of the most common ones are listed here. Lisinopril, I'm pretty sure, is very common. There's many more, so you're welcome to look those up, but those are just some of them. So you have this prescription that could be doing that as well. In these disease states, you have chronic inflammation. They're chronic inflammatory diseases. So inflammation and impaired immune system are also factors here. With chronic inflammation, nutrition is the first line of defense. We can decrease inflammation through the foods we eat, and we can boost our immune system as well. So let's talk about immune system boosting foods. I'm going to go through and you will see they're biological compounds or chemical compounds that are found in food. And then I'll show what foods contain these compounds. So first one is a flavonoid called quercetin. Quercetin has been shown to restore antioxidants in the lungs. Antioxidants are extremely important or play an important role in protecting us against infections, including viruses. So the idea here is we want to optimize our health and manage comorbidities, right? So quercetin restore antioxidants in the lungs. We know the lungs are an area that ACE2 receptors are and can be impacted by the virus. So about 500 milligrams a day are is the level commonly used in studies. And they can be found in leafy greens, asparagus, romaine, and onion. Interesting note here is that to keep in mind that foods can have different levels depending on the time of year, the soil quality, and where they're grown. So onion, for instance, in summer has 11 milligrams of quercetin, but in the winter, 41.9. That's a pretty big difference. So keep that in mind. Also, onion the quercetin can be concentrated in the skin, which is usually the part we throw away. So I always recommend that my clients just keep a bag in the freezer, and you can store your onion skins, garlic skins, the bottom of the celery stalks, broccoli stalks, carrot butts, and everything, and store those throughout the week. Normally you would throw that away, right, or compost it. And then when it's full, dump it in a pot, boil it with water and salt, peppercorn, and you've got your own homemade veggie broth. or bone broth if you choose to add those as well. So it's a nice way to save money, and that can also increase our quercetin intake and other beneficial biological compounds. Vitamin A is also important for health of our mucosal tissue and barrier function. So recommended is different for women and men. You can see them here. Also, if you want a copy of this, just let me know and I will send it to you, or I'll have a downloadable version on my website. Sweet potatoes are a good source. Kale is a great source. And salmon. And salmon is a great source of other vitamins that you'll see that can help boost our immune system. So vitamin C is also very important for our immune health. I think we all know that pretty well. Also for boosting white blood cells to help fight infection. And it increases the level of, or the ability for us to absorb plant-based iron, and iron has been shown to protect against infection. Note about vitamin C is we're unable to synthesize it, so we do have to get it through a diet or a supplement. And it is water-soluble vitamin, which means that if you have too much of it, you will just pee it out. Or, if you kind of reach saturation, basically, in the body, you'll just pee it out. Again, different for males and females. If you're a smoker, it's recommended that you increase 35 milligrams. Pineapple is a really good source, and so is bell pepper. Important to note is that in bell pepper, the vitamin C is concentrated in what's called the pith, which is that white, kind of tougher texture part of the bell pepper that most people throw away or cut out because it's maybe a little bitter or just bland, but that is where most of the vitamin C is, so please eat that. Strawberries, also keep those whole up until you're ready to eat them, because as soon as you cut into a strawberry, they do start to leach out their vitamin C content as soon as they're exposed to oxygen. And then broccoli, the vitamin C content is higher if it's cooked as opposed to raw. Vitamin D may reduce the risk of acute respiratory tract infection. Vitamin D is a fat-soluble supplement, so we can store it, and status of vitamin D should be determined before supplementation. It's not like vitamin C where you just pee it out if you have too much. Recommended intake is same for women and men. It just depends on your age. Up here in the Pacific Northwest, we don't synthesize vitamin D from the sun for most of the year. I believe it's April through the end of September or mid-October we can, but the rest of the year, even when the sun's out, we can't synthesize vitamin D from it. So it's a good idea for people in the Pacific Northwest to get tested if they can. Fish is a really good source of vitamin D as well. Mushrooms are a cool source of vitamin D because they can continue to absorb it even after they've been harvested. So if you buy mushrooms at the store, you can place them in your windowsill and they will still continue to synthesize vitamin D from the sunshine. So if you can, put them in the sun. Vitamin E is another important one. It's not antiviral, but it is one of our most efficient antioxidants, especially in lung and liver protection. So again, smokers are recommended to increase their vitamin E intake because smoking depletes it in the lungs. What's cool about vitamin E, is it can accumulate in lipid membranes, and it can react really quickly with free radicals that trigger nuclear factors that produce cytokines. So we're going to talk about cytokines in a little bit because they're involved in how our immune system responds to the virus. Vitamin E is also fat-soluble. When I say that too, it's important to note if you're eating something with vitamin E, to pair it with a source of fat. So like below I've listed spinach. Make sure you have some type of fat that goes with it. Nuts and seeds contain fat. Spinach and broccoli will need to have the fat added on. Selenium is also important for proper immune system function. It's a potent antioxidant, and studies have shown deficiency can actually alter the immune system's ability to respond to a virus, which we do not want. It is also a cofactor in something called glutathione peroxidase, which we'll talk about glutathione in a little bit, but glutathione peroxidase is an enzyme that helps us synthesize more glutathione internally, and glutathione is the queen of antioxidants. So increasing or upregulating synthesis of glutathione is really important, and that's what that enzyme helps do. So selenium is a cofactor to an enzyme that helps us synthesize glutathione. Really cool. One Brazil nut can provide your daily dose of selenium. That's pretty incredible. So it's basically just a nut that's a supplement. You can also find it in fish sources and cottage cheese and brown rice. Zinc, you've probably heard, but zinc is really beneficial for not only avoiding or fighting off infections, but also if you get sick, it tends to reduce the duration of cold symptoms. There's no studies on that directly with COVID, but there's been a lot of studies on zinc and how it affects with viruses, and it may inhibit binding and replication in the mucosal lining in our nasal passageway, and it may suppress inflammation, both of which are good things for our immune system as well. So oysters are an incredible source of zinc. So if you're out on San Juan Island, just scoot on out to Westcott Bay, or I hear they deliver now too. Protein is also important. I just wanted to highlight this because it's actually specific amino acids, which are proteins are broken down to amino acids. So specific amino acids from animal-based protein may help promote immune defense against viral infections. So if you are vegetarian or vegan, these are absent from plant foods. But whey protein, undenatured whey protein, contains something called lactoferrin, which has been shown in studies to have antiviral properties. So that's something to consider if you are eating a diet that has no meat. Elderly are also at increased risk of protein malnutrition. So if you're over 65 or 70, start to make sure that you are getting enough protein. Coconut oil is also a great food to start incorporating. It is antiviral and may impair replication and breakdown of membrane of the virus. So this is a great thing to start incorporating. Keep in mind that you want to buy cold pressed and unrefined, and that its smoke point is actually 350. And so if you are going to be cooking over that temperature, the oil can become unstable, and then it can start to be somewhat harmful to the body, or it may not be as beneficial. So just keep an eye on what temperature you're cooking at. Okay, so now I wanted to look at how our immune system responds to the virus and potential nutrition interventions at that time. So I mentioned cytokines before, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about what exactly they are and how they apply here. Cytokines they kind of act like hormones. They're a signal that is released by our immune system. They're substances released by our immune system responding to an antigen. Some are pro-inflammatory and some are anti-inflammatory. They aren't bad. In fact, we actually need cytokines, and it's a form of our cells communicating, like I said, like hormones. Cytokines in COVID-19, there are specific ones associated with COVID. So interleukin 2, IL-7, interferon gamma, tumor necrosis factor alpha, and so on. You can see them there. So I mention those only because I will, in the next couple of slides, talk about some foods and how they impact cytokines. And so we're looking at foods that specifically impact these cytokine levels. And then you may have heard the term cytokine storm by now. They are COVID-19, toward the end of the virus, people are having what's called a cytokine storm, and it's causing multi-organ failure. So it's a rapid release of numerous cytokines, both pro- and anti-inflammatory, and that's overwhelming the system and causing this multi-organ failure. So what can we do about that? Well, we can look at a few different things. One can be cytokine inhibitors. So curcumin has been shown to be an incredible compound. It's found in turmeric. And during the Ebola outbreak, it was shown to suppress cytokine storms. So it specifically blocks the release of pro-inflammatory cytokines, IL-1, IL-6, and TNF-alpha that you see listed there. So those are also associated with COVID. So like I said, we look at history, research, what it shows us, and how it may apply today. So turmeric is also just a great thing to incorporate into your food anyway because it's anti-inflammatory. It's going to help protect you from other chronic inflammatory diseases like cardiovascular disease, hypertension, diabetes, etc. Important to note, curcumin is actually not easily absorbed in the body, but if you pair it with black pepper, that enhances absorption by 2,000%, and adding fat also enhances absorption. So I generally recommend to clients when adding in turmeric that something like golden milk, so golden milk is heated coconut milk with turmeric and other spices, a little bit of honey, and then black pepper on top. So it's like a turmeric latte, but it's got the fat because it's got the coconut milk has a high fat content, and then you do black pepper on top, and that helps absorb. How much? As much as you are willing to incorporate. A tablespoon to 2 a day is a good place to start. What else can we do? We can look at flavonoids. Resveratrol and luteolin are two that we can incorporate when we can. Resveratrol is found concentrated in the skin of grapes and peanuts, hence the glass of red wine on the right. Red wine is a good source of resveratrol. Definitely red wine over white. White wine does not actually have a very high resveratrol content. So definitely go for the red wine. It's going to depend on the variety of grape, which is why I don't give levels of resveratrol here, because it can range pretty widely, but darker reds are generally going to have a higher content. Dark chocolate also contains resveratrol, and like I said, peanuts, but it's in the skin of the peanuts. So if you buy peanuts, try to get the ones with the skin on them. So these have been shown to reduce overall cytokine expression and secretion, and this was based on a study on individuals with chronic inflammatory diseases, not specifically viruses, but it did impact the cytokines interleukin 1 beta, TNF alpha, and IL-6, and those are ones that we've discussed that are common in COVID. I mentioned the other flavonoid, luteolin. Celery, thyme, green peppers, and chamomile tea contain that. Another area we can intervene are on viral enzymes. So, what are proteases? Proteases are enzymes that help us break down proteins, but they also play an important role in viral replication. And so, these can be targeted for reducing virus spread and the impact of virus if it happens to enter our body. So let's look at some viral enzyme inhibitors. These are flavonoids listed on the left, and the medicinal plants on the right, which contain these flavonoids that can be beneficial. These specifically impact the main protease that has been found to be influential in COVID. So there's a few different ones, I won't list them, but these research shows impact that protease most effectively. Something else that's interesting is researchers found that flavonoid compounds have a similar structure in biological action as nilfinavir, which is the antiviral drug with promise as pharmaceutical therapy for COVID-19. So that's pretty cool. You can read these here or download and save these. I won't read them all off, but you can see fresh herbs and spices and citrus are really great to start incorporating. Other potential inhibitors, skullcap, which is a blue flowering perennial plant, those are the biological compounds they contain that have been shown to be beneficial. Also, I mentioned glutathione, the queen of antioxidants. We can't get it directly from diet, but we do synthesize it, which means we can eat things to upregulate the enzymes that synthesize glutathione in our body. So, arugula, cruciferous vegetables like cauliflower, kale, broccoli, and then garlic and whey protein have been shown to promote synthesis of glutathione. And an important note here about glutathione as well is that toxins in the environment, toxins from our diet, and toxins from stress can all contribute to reduced levels of glutathione. And so I think we can all say we're experiencing stress for sure. And so ramping up glutathione synthesis is going to be beneficial for all. Hesperidin, another one, it's found in citrus. It's concentrated in the rind of citrus generally, so zest when you can. It may bind to spike protein, which, if you remember, I said that's one of the unique characteristics of coronavirus. So hesperidin may bind to spike protein and actually interfere with the refolding or replication and inhibit the viral infection process. So that's pretty cool. Hesperidin, side note, is also beneficial for potentially lowering cholesterol. Apparently it's sticky. It kind of sticks to LDL cholesterol and bile, and then it gets excreted from the body. So hesperidin, get after your citrus. Riboflavin, also that's B2, should be incorporated, and vitamin C, as mentioned before. Other recommendations, as you can see from what previously mentioned, use herbs and spices liberally. I don't even think we've begun to kind of find everything they're beneficial for. But they have, even though they're kind of small, they can have a profound impact in the body and contain a lot of healing compounds. And they add flavor, so why not? Cut out sugars, and I'm talking about added sugars, not fruit sugar, and I'm not really talking about occasional honey or maple syrup. But sugar actually weakens our immune system, and of course we need that right now. Practice self-care for stress reduction. Again, this applies to, well, many areas, but glutathione Stress can increase our toxic load, and that can reduce our levels of glutathione. Also, it's just good to get in the habit of practicing self-care. Also, sleep, rest, and exercise along that line. Those are all good self-care routines to get into. It's important to keep those up, even though we're all stuck at home. And then find ways to connect with friends and family. I love seeing what everyone's doing online, connecting on Zoom, and driving by happy birthdays and things like that. And don't forget to practice gratitude, being both towards yourself and towards others. When you practice it towards others, it increases your overall happiness. So those are all happy things and happy thoughts I wanted to end on. Thank you so much for listening. I've got my references listed here. And let me know, please, if you have any questions. Thank you so much.